Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary. And we have T. Frank from the BWI website, the Penn State On3 site. He's a staff writer and the host of BWI Live. And we're going to chop it up about this upcoming Rutgers Penn State game for Senior Day for the Scarlet Knights. T. Frank, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, good to be here. Always love doing these interactions with other On3 sites. We're all in our little bubble for most of the season because we're all just, grinding out content, doing it our best again to give as much as we can to the people who subscribe to our sites and our YouTube channels. But it's nice to poke your head up once in a while and just hang out. And I don't know a whole lot of people outside of the people I work with in the company. So these are great. This is as much good for me as it is for fans. I enjoy these. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a good socialization exercise for those of us who are just kind of heads down in our own little bubble, like you said. But we want to thank our sponsor, FanDuel, before we get too deep into this. This line has moved quite a bit since it opened at 10.5. Rutgers is now a 13.5-point underdog to the Nittany Lions. And hopefully by the end of this podcast, you have a better idea of where you would potentially put some of your hard-earned money. But T. Frank, let's talk a little bit about kind of vibes around this program right now. I know things certainly have not gone as I think most Penn State fans could have even wildly imagined, even the worst case scenario this season. Terry Smith is on a 2-game winning streak. Tell us where things stand inside the Penn State program right now.
When does this come out? Because that'll tell you exactly where they stand. It has been a roller coaster. It was the lowest you could ever get. And now, there was a loop-de-loop in the middle. They've gone off a cliff. And now I think we're on the ascent. We're on the next up swing on the roller coaster before the next shoe drops, whenever that is, most likely after the season. When everything's resolved and players can start making their announcements about their futures. But right now, everyone is riding the Terry Smith wave. They played well against Indiana, took them to the brink, and then they just smacked Michigan State around in the second half of that game, in a game that was closer than it should have been for a couple of reasons on offense. And then this last week, just absolutely blitzing Nebraska without actually having to blitz them. They were early and often the offenses look like it hasn't in a long time at Penn State, where they put in one of the first times they've been able to put, the boot on the neck in the first half on a team. They've not been able to do that in a long time. And so doing that against Nebraska has everyone feeling really good. There's people out there chirping. Nobody wants to play Penn State right now. And I'm like, well, that's where we are. Just to give you an example of where we are, the message boards and the fan sentiment are all hire Terry Smith, and this is great. Let's do this forever.
Yeah, and it must have been interesting too for the Matt Rule loyalists, and getting his his shit pushed in that game. But Rich, I think you got a question about the coaching search here.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been all over between you, Nate, Sean, Ryan, et cetera, et cetera. Your entire staff's been all over this one. I've been checking out your boards here and there just to kind of peek out of curiosity. But how serious is Terry Smith in terms of potentially getting this job? And if he's not that serious of a candidate, who are the other names? Because I see a new name every day, it seems like.
Yeah, so that has been the case of they have cast a wide net of candidates and coaches that are interested in the job and interested in terms of, I'll talk to Penn State to see what's up there. But what you've seen is kind of the waves crash on the shore and then recede, and there hasn't been any sort of momentum building for a long time towards one particular candidate. And for the names specifically, I'll defer to Nate over at the BlueWhiteIllustrated.com message board, and in his articles, he just wrote a buzzworthy. So if you're a Rutgers fan that's interested about this, you want to subscribe and pay $1 to go check out the site. I don't want to give away too many of the goods, but the names that you've been hearing are the names that have been involved. And the question is just I said this on the Tuesday show. Is there a sense of now that we're down here to the final couple of names and candidates and the list has dwindled down, is everyone picking their favorite horse? And so I think it might be this guy, or I think it might be this guy based on how some things play out. And to me, that's where we are in terms of everyone's going to put their money on somebody being a candidate. And Terry Smith is a part of the conversation, but is he the favorite? And so I think he is the fan favorite, but I mean this respectfully, fans are easily influenced and swayed by what happened yesterday. And by yesterday, I mean in the last game. And so things are great now, but Pack Craft can't be swayed by who won the last game, or else you're making the most short-sighted decision you could after upsetting the apple cart of what was 12 years of stability for Penn State. Right or wrong, good or bad, whether you like 10 wins or not, whether you liked beating most of the Big Ten or not. It was absolutely predictably stable, and now you can't be out here kind of blowing in the wind with what's the latest trendy thing. I think we're going to find out sooner. This is just my opinion here, not reporting. I think we're going to find out sooner than maybe I thought originally going into like some of the candidates, some of the top candidates they had. I'll just get like, if Kalen DeBoer was on the table, it had to happen before the playoff started, because you're not leaving a school when you've got a playoff opportunity on the table. The point of going to a place like Penn State is to win a national championship. And if you're in the playoff, you have a chance to win a national championship. So what in the world? Why would you do that? Especially if it's a place like Penn State that is not appreciably better than the place you are in if you're in Alabama. So like there were some things that I think have to play out for Penn State to get the guys that they wanted. And we've seen a lot of that not play out in their favor, and guys staying where they are. And then the list of top candidates kind of dwindle to where we are now, where there's, the final list of both their making and also it was pressed upon them, right? Of guys not being interested enough in the job to not re-sign with their current school.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the weird situation we're in now, because like when Penn State fired James Franklin, like everybody who was like a top 35 team could squint and tell themselves a story that they were going to make the playoff. And I think that inspired them to kind of re-up their coaches maybe a little earlier than they initially would have, like the Matt Rules and a couple other coaches. So it does put you guys in a weird spot where like, there are a lot of good candidates out there, but is it like, if you don't hit on like the DeBoer, is it like I don't know, is there a lot of anxiety around this coaching search? Because yeah, and it's been going on for long enough that people are losing their minds. Like, it is legitimately causing people to have a certain level of stress and anxiety about it, because, when you start the search, and we talk about casting a wide net, right? There's a ton of fish in the net. You have this infinite possibility of who can they go get? Go get Nick Saban. Go get Urban Meyer. Go get Jesus himself to coach at Penn State. And like, all the possibilities are out there. And then one by one, they start coming out of the pond. Like, they're not actually possibilities. And so then you have a certain group of people. And I think that there is a fair argument to be, kind of put out here that this is a bit of an own goal, because maybe you want to do the right thing by James Franklin. Let's say that that's the thing that you're actually thinking of, why you make that decision to fire him after Northwestern. And the reason being, like, I knew that it was basically what Pat Kraft said was, I knew I was going to do it, so why wait? Like, it had become clear to me that was going to be what we did. Well, why you would wait is you don't want to lose all of your recruits, and you don't want to lose your entire team into the transfer portal to make these decisions over the last 5-6 weeks. And you didn't have a home game to put that toxic environment out there again until Indiana. So you could have gone through the entire month of October and into November without having a home game and having that particular situation. Now, around the program, there would have been that intense negativity. That was not going to go away. That was palpable. But you didn't have to have the in-person reaction and reality of it. So I think that there is a fair criticism of like the timing of it. But at the same time, would that have materially changed the rest of the coaching search and the rest of the coaching world? I think these deals would have just been, it would have created more pressure on those programs to sign their coaches quicker. And that's about it. Like, it just lengthened the amount of time negotiation happened for everybody else. And so there is, now that you're down to a handful of candidates, and it's not your top three that maybe you had when you had your preferences. There are people that are upset with how the coaching search went, and there are people who are nervous that Penn State is going to fire a top 10 head coach and replace him with what the perception and the goal was to go get a top 5 head coach. I will see if that's something that happens, and then you have to assess, was that a good trade? And, we'll find out before the new year is about what I'll say. No, it's totally fair. And appreciate you kind of diving into this topic that's not necessarily about this game, but I feel like you kind of have to address that to talk anything about Penn State this year.
It's the most frustrating thing for me because I'm an X's and O's on the field guy, and I'm like, hey, on my shows, on my post-game shows, I'm like, hey, here's what happened in the game. Here's the reasons why it played out. And everyone's like, hey, T. Frank, the house is burning down. We don't care about why, like where the silverware is. And so it's been like, for me, like this has not been my, I have not been in the fast lane of like what people care about when it comes to Penn State football. So it has been an interesting year to say the least.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Let's talk about this offense, though, because it seems like the last few weeks you guys have really kind of gotten right with just being a run-first team. I know there was a lot of kind of consternation about the even split between the running backs early on in the season, and it seems like Kaytron Allen has now kind of taken that, RB1 role by the mantle. Just talk about the kind of the evolution of the offense throughout the season. Obviously, you got a new quarterback now who's looked better when his role has been reduced. But just overall high level, what's this offense look like right now?
They have simplified and streamlined. Andy Kotelnicki's offense is about the perception of complexity with the simplicity of we only run a handful of plays. But within that perception of complexity, it did change some things for some of the players and created some hesitation and just a lack of ability to play fast, fire off the ball, and execute sound fundamentals, especially up front. Like this is all about the offensive line. This is entirely about the offensive line playing better. And Terry Smith said on Monday, when asked, like, what's the difference in the offensive line? He said, we've made the commitment to run the ball, period. And Terry's an interesting guy because he doesn't necessarily have the cadence of a head coach who's been up there a lot, to talk a lot, and be in a situation where, you kind of command the room. That vibe of everyone knows when he's done talking. And then we go on to the next question. So it was helpful that he said period because he kind of just trailed off of one sentence answer. But I also think it means like in the offense, we're not doing any of the shifts and motions. We're not running as much read option because we don't have a backup quarterback anymore because that guy got hurt too. We're not going to run Liam Clifford on half of the plays as our Wildcat quarterback. We are going to line up and we are going to run inside zone or counter or outside zone. And you can shift in motion to change the front, but that's about it. Like we're not doing the extra things. So we're going to run the ball, period. Because there were games where they would run options and then the opponent, whoever it might be, UCLA, somebody else, Indiana, would take that opportunity to force Penn State into the option they probably didn't want. Because in read option football, it's an either or, and the quarterback has to make a read on the play. But the defense can dictate what the read is by knowing your keys. And so that's what teams had done to Penn State this year. And I'm not saying there's no place for read option football, and then there's no place for RPO football. But to the way that they were being manipulated, it was not helping them. They are using it more judiciously now, and I think it is exactly what has re-energized this. And to the running back part, I was of the assumption Stan Drayton came in to Penn State from his job at Temple, a prolific running back coach who's put guys like Bijan Robinson and Ezekiel Elliott into the NFL, guy who's developed running backs. And he explained through the offseason his process of they need to understand the game like an offensive lineman. I want them to understand the formation. I want them to understand where the gaps are going to open up and where they're going to close based on what the defense is doing and what you know about football. And he said, like, these guys hadn't been taught any of that stuff. They'd known some things about safety, where the safety is going to come from, the rotation of that, which is important for running backs, but they hadn't really gotten into the details of football. Kaytron Allen was instinctively doing a lot of these things, and Nick Singleton was doing these things somewhat instinctively. Now Kaytron Allen knows that part of the game, and he picked it up much quicker than Singleton. Singleton looked like a guy overwhelmed by information early in the year, and they were trying to get him going. So early in the year, to me in the non-conference, what I saw was we need to get Nick as many reps as possible, and Kaytron can come in and get some carries, but he doesn't really need them. So they use the non-conference as a warm-up. And I know we're going all the way back to September, but this is the frustration in the offense is Kaytron's obviously better. Why aren't we playing him? And that was the story of they were trying to be a national championship team. They were trying to build to a certain point, and they needed Nick to come along, and it didn't happen in time. And so they made the transition under James Franklin to go more to Kaytron Allen as the lead back, but not until Terry Smith did they really just rip the Band-Aid off and say, It's Katron's show. Nick, you can come in like a 2-to-1 ratio, and we're not going to worry about whether it's a passing down or whatever because he's a better receiver. They just said Katron and then Nick, and that has re-energized Nick Singleton, by the way. He has been playing better in that secondary role as a receiver. He's been playing better as a runner, I think, because some of the pressure is off, and he gets it now. They simplified the offense. There's not as much for him to track with his eyes, and he can pre-snap see a little better and then be decisive after the snap. So that is really like the story of the offense runs through that, and then Ethan Grunkmeyer has been using play action off of that to just in this last game, rip off chunks of yardage. But for the most part, just kind of be a game manager as a sidecar behind those guys as the engine on the offensive side.
Kind of shifting to the pass catchers, and I'll group tight end in this just because obviously Tyler Warren last year, leading receiver by far. What has been the biggest issue there? Because in the offseason, Penn State added some serious weapons in Devontae Ross, Trevor Pena, Kyron Wallace, and I know they lost some weapons too in Trey Wallace and Amari Evans, and of course Tyler Warren. But what has been the biggest issue with this wide receiver room? It seems like every year there's hype and it just never lives up to it.
The answer this year has been everything. It's really the answer. Okay, so again, we're gonna have to go back to the beginning. It's been 2 separate seasons, and I know that like these are some longer answers, but like here's the deal, right? Here's the problem: is they built this offense around Drew Aller, and so they wanted to have. There's been 3 iterations because what was working and what they were trying to do in the non-conference season was get these guys integrated with Aller. They wanted to work on the passing game with these new players to get them up to speed so that when they got into the regular season, they would have a truly balanced offense. And the receivers and the running game and everything just didn't work because they had been emphasizing the wrong thing. Like, let's just say they had not been emphasizing the run game to get that going well for all the things we just talked about, and they were emphasizing the passing game. Drew Aller, good quarterback, not a guy that's going to, with these receivers, lead you to the promised land. That's pretty clear. But he was also set up at a disadvantage where because they didn't have these play action windows and they didn't have really like good passing concepts, the receivers just couldn't get open. These are not elite receivers. These are guys, the way I described it is between the tight ends, the running backs, and the receivers, somebody's going to be open because they're all decent football players. Andy Kolnicki called it elite parity. But elite parity is also elite averageness, and that's really what they were. They tried to build around Kyron Hudson. I don't think he was up to the task. Devontae Ross, a better player, injured at the start of the season, worked his way in. And then Trevor Pena, they completely misused him as a jet sweep player, as a pop pass guy, run after the catch, screens, things like that. And he's my size. Like, he's not a big physical tackle breaker who is going to get you yards through broken tackles. And so they were putting guys in the wrong positions to succeed, in my opinion, because they were using Devontae Ross just as a deep threat. And he's much more of a route runner, intermediate catch and run. He does do the deep ball well, but they just didn't have any consistency there. And then Aller gets hurt. And so there's a complete reset in the passing game because he was carrying the offense, whether or not he was carrying them to the promised land or not. He was the offense. Him scrambling, him throwing the ball. He was better than people give him credit for because in the big moments, you throw interceptions into windows that were terrible, into looks that weren't good. So now they've re-engineered everything around the young quarterback who can't do as much. But in this simplification, they have found something that works, getting these receivers downfield in intermediate windows to throw play action passes off the back of the run game. And they've trusted their quarterback a bit more. I'll stop there. But there's been some problems even in this iteration of like what they did against Ohio State versus what they do now that has just been very frustrating to watch them work through to get to where they are now. But where they are now is genuinely like a complimentary winning brand of football.
So obviously with a complimentary brand of winning football, you need to have a pretty solid offensive line. The offensive line, from what I can tell from afar, is actually pretty good. Talk about what the strengths are of this offensive line, and is that an accurate read on the situation?
They are capable of dominating inferior opponents. I think if they were to, even in this situation, go up against another Ohio State or Oregon, I think they would struggle still because here's the thing, is they have NFL talent across the line. There's 3 guys that I think are going to play in the NFL, and I think Nolan Rucci is going to get a cup of coffee somewhere with his size. So Venga Ioane is going to be a top 50 pick, probably. I think there's buzz of him as a first-round draft pick. I love Venga as a football player. I've seen that talent since the beginning. I don't know. I don't think he was like a top 10 in a PFF mock draft, and that's insane. Like, I don't think he's going above, like tackles that are elite movers. He's really, 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 really good. He's going to be a 10-year starter in the NFL. Drew Shelton's another guy that's going to play guard in the NFL, but he's going to play. And then eventually Anthony Donko is going to be that. He's probably the most athletically talented guy that could be someday a future first-round draft pick. So they've got the horses up front. But I also think like Nick Dawkins, Nolan Richie, like they don't have the whole overall profile to be a dominant run game, but this is fitting them better. And they are playing up to that potential. They were not playing up to that potential for most of the season because of the things we talked about, like the way the offense is functioning around them, and they weren't able to key on what they were supposed to do, being confident and go out and aggressively block. Now they are. And so I think that that's what's going to show up for as long as this team gets to play, whether it's just this game or if they decide that they all want to come back together and play in the bowl game, which is, wishing on unicorns and stars at this point, but it's, as Terry Smith has said, in the realm of infinite possibilities. It could happen, I guess.
Jeez. Got a little bit of a fun one for you. What's your biggest concern with this Penn State offense? And if you were designing a game plan against them, what would your game plan be to try to negate it?
Oh, my biggest concern with the offense is that they've had to completely eliminate the drop back passing game with Ethan Grunkmeyer. And by had to, I think they've chosen to. So he was hit or miss. He was a little bit erratic. And this gets into the conversation that we didn't have about the passing game, is they opened it up for him to try and let him run the offense against Iowa. And he threw a bad interception because he made a misread. Then he was decisive when he should have been decisive and threw the ball and got another interception before halftime. That eventually, these things did eventually, the attrition of that led them to losing that game against Iowa. So they learned the wrong lesson, in my opinion, of now we're just going to throw a bunch of screens. And that's what happened against Ohio State. They just didn't let him throw the football. So he didn't throw on first down ever, and it got 3rd and 8, and suddenly they're going to go, okay, now fix it for us. Redshirt freshman quarterback against one of the best defenses in the country. And he actually did an okay job in the first half, but then once they got down by 20 points or so, it was like there's just no chance they're going to come back. And they did that against Indiana, and they didn't score any points until after, at halftime, Terry Smith said, throw the ball down the field, and don't wait until 3rd down. And suddenly what the game plan that you see now has been what's emerged. So I don't think Rutgers can challenge them in this area, but if somebody were able to stop the run with an even hand, I do think that if you force the ball into Ethan Grunkmeyer's hands, it gets a little bit unpredictable because I don't know what they'll allow him to do. And if they go back to the screen game plan, I don't want to watch that anymore. I'm tired of that. So that would be, I guess, the thing I would say if you're Penn State, if you're going up against Penn State, you got to stop the run. You've got to not overcommit to it either. That's the hard part, is you can't overcommit because they want to throw play action. They want to use that against you. So you've got to be talented up front in the trenches. And they're going to beat you up front unless you can, with your front 4, front 5, whatever you want to say, you can play them to a stalemate. And, there's one game left in the season. I don't know that there's anybody that's going to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That hasn't necessarily been Rutgers' defensive strength this year, but there hasn't really been a strength on defense.
What's going on? I haven't really got into all of the film, but what I've seen so far, I was shocked that they're both not good at stopping the pass, which is a Greg Schiano thing. And then, the run stats I'm seeing is they've allowed 72 runs of 10 yards or more this year, which is the stats when you look at them comparatively, like Nebraska, who Penn State, as you just said, they kicked Nebraska's shit in. Rutgers is worse by over a full yard in terms of yards per carry. What is going on?
Oh, man. So since we're doing long-winded story time, let's do long-winded story time. And by the way, love those kind of answers. I'm not hating on any, I love when a guest comes on and expounds so you don't have to pull information out. So I want to, T. Frank, thank you for that.
Sure.
So Rutgers lost their defensive coordinator last year, Joe Harris-Simiak. He's now the coach at UMass, who, man, unfortunately just went 0-12. They've had their last game of the season. So rough season for him.
That is a UMass staple, though. That is a very, I feel like I hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So when his replacement was kind of being decided upon and interviewed, it seemed like they struck out over and over and over and over with some of their top candidates. And maybe they weren't really looking in the right place. Greg Schiano, one of our big criticisms for him is he has this narrow circle that he likes to kind of pull from continually. So he tried to get Anthony Campanelli, who is now the defensive coordinator with the Jaguars, doing a good job. He tried to get his first call was Corey Heatherman, who was his former linebacker coach. Then he had a great season with Minnesota, defensive coordinator, but he decided to go to Miami. And there was a few other names that weren't out there, so I'm not going to put them out there. But let's just say Rob Smith was maybe his 10th or best, or his 10th candidate at best. So he adds him because it took 2 months to hire a defensive coordinator.
Somebody's got to do the job at some point.
Somebody has to do the job.
Yeah.
And he's worked with him. This is his 4th stint with Rob Smith. He's been the Rutgers defensive coordinator now 3 times. He worked with Greg down in Tampa when he was the head coach of the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And basically Rob Smith has left a wake of destruction everywhere he's gone, whether it be at Rutgers, whether it be at Arkansas, whether it be at Minnesota, whether it be at Rutgers again, because he let him go in 2021 after he didn't like the job he was doing. So I think we all kind of were primed that this is going to be a rough season defensively.
Okay.
But I don't think anybody could have thought in their wildest imagination that we would be maybe the worst defense in Big Ten history bad. Because like you said, those stats, they're terrible. I was diving into the yards per play stats, and right now Rutgers is allowing something like 7.7 yards per play in Big Ten play. That is by far the worst of any team in Big Ten play since at least 2000. The next worst is 7.3 yards per play. By 2018, Illinois allowed that many. 2015, Rutgers allowed that many. I calculated it last night. So Rutgers is on average facing about 59 plays per game on defense. The only way that they aren't the worst yards per play team in Big Ten history, at least since 2000, is if they hold Penn State to under 3.5 yards per play. And they haven't held a single team under 6 yards per play in the FBS this year. So setting, they're terrible.
Yeah, and the number of plays there is out of whack for me, and that must tell me that it's because they're giving up so many explosive plays that they're not forcing guys on teams on long drives, because you just get you rip off a 20-yard completion or a run, and then suddenly you're in field goal territory. So they're just not facing as many plays because it's just a lot of yards. That's wow. That is
everything is just it's poor coaching, I think, first and foremost, because there's so many just like wide open coverage busts, and that's what he's known for, is just like this overly complex defense that places linebackers and safeties in impossible to win situations where if they don't read everything and react at like an all pro level, there's just no way to make a play with how the defense is designed, which caused Greg Schiano to take the reins back. And it hasn't been officially announced, but I think we all can tell Greg Schiano is calling the plays now, because there's when he was coaching the bowl game last year after Joe Harris-Simiak left, he called the plays and he had the play sheet in his hands. He had the readers on. Yeah. And that's what he started to do since, what was it, Rich? The Purdue game he took over?
Yeah.
So since the Purdue game, we have seen, he talks about incremental improvement all the time, but sometimes you can kind of see it where the play that the redshirt sophomore defensive end was whiffing on early in the season. Now he's like making the right read, at least slowing the guy down.
Yeah.
We didn't really see anything like that early on in the season. But we have seen some steady improvement over the last 4 games. Now, is it, have we gone from the worst team in the Big Ten defensively to an average team? No. But we have gotten a little bit better the last 4 games, which for us, like just not seeing 5 plays of 50 plus yards in a game and it's cut down to 2 has been a nice change of pace, but it's still like there's still going to be opportunities for big plays for Penn State on very basic play calls.
Yeah.
Rich, I know
that's what they like.
That.
That's what they like, is very basic play calls.
Yeah, I think the only thing you missed is Greg's kind of putting a lot of blame too on the fact that he wasn't able to do full-on portal evaluations. He's kind of put that on his staff this offseason because he had to focus on NIL because the athletic department raised about $0 for Rutgers football. 99% of the NIL they have is from Greg Schiano raising it himself. Friday nights before games, Thursday nights before games, he was going out to dinners, going to do this and that, and trying to get any amount of money that he could, and he didn't have time, he's saying, to do the portal evaluations. I still think that's kind of a poor excuse, but that's just me.
Yeah, so that's where Rutgers defense is. A lot of, poor reads, or bad angles by the safeties, a lot of, biting on play action by the linebackers, a lot of inability. They're just getting washed out on the edges too, or they're just like, getting mauled sometimes by opposing offensive lines. So it definitely is concerning that Penn State has had the ability to kind of manhandle, inferior opponents along the lines, which Rutgers certainly does not have. The strength of the team is not the defensive line. So let's talk about this Penn State defense, though. Big acquisition this offseason, getting Jim Knowles from Ohio State. It seems like, the Penn State defense has taken a little bit of a step back, though, under him. Is that because his defense is too complex, or is it just it's a new system and it's always going to have taken a lot longer to kind of implement it? Like, what's your read on the defensive coordinator situation and play calling for Penn State?
Yeah, kind of a similar situation, except it only took 2 weeks and everyone loved the hire. Where the defense is a little too complex to do in year one, and I think he's a little too impatient in the installation. And that was something we talked about back in February when he was hired, which was he said, like, we're only going to do what they can handle, and we're only going to, and James Franklin has talked about this, or did talk about this, where they have an integration policy of you can be the defensive coordinator, but you're going to speak our language. Not everyone's going to use your defensive verbiage, and you're going to keep as much as makes sense and is possible with this particular team so that we don't have this problem of a defensive reset, because when Manny Diaz came in, that's what happened. They had a defensive reset in 2022. And the problem was when you bring in a really good defensive coordinator, and I know it didn't go well this year, but Jim Knowles is a good defensive coordinator. They run their stuff, and that's what they know. And so that's what happened is they tried to do those things, and they didn't. They did not do that. They put in too much. And Terry Smith has talked about it. The thing that I, from my perspective as a guy who watches the coaches film and tries to understand how these things are going, it's that they do a lot in terms of they run every single coverage. Because, like teams pick their favorite coverages and they run those. And then you are either complex up front or you're complex in the back. You can't be complex everywhere because you can't blitz all the time and play complex coverages. You don't have enough bodies. So it's the complexity of the way Terry Smith described it is every call could have 3 or 4 if this, then that's. So they've eliminated some of that. They've installed more attacking style, and they've kind of found a middle ground between the Diaz and Tom Allen style, which is aggressive defensive linemen attacking upfield, allowing their defensive ends to go hunt. And I mean that in the run game as well. They wanted to control the line of scrimmage and let linebackers and safeties flow to the ball previously. But that's not what they were set up to do. Like they don't have the athletes up front to play gap and a half football where you're shoving your guy into the next gap and then you're reading and they just they are built to go upfield and hunt. And so they're allowing some of their players to do that more. And there's been a positive effect on the emotion of the defense, the confidence of the defense, and the execution. And Terry Smith has talked about this we're also now almost a full year into this. So you have all that banked time of players understanding the defense better. The problem was they couldn't get through some of these games and win them while working through these problems. The wheels completely came off. And a big part of this also is losing Tony Rojas, because some of the things that we talked about of them not playing, the defensive line to me is the biggest miscommunication of talent and scheme. They didn't have the horses to run what they wanted, but Tony Rojas was fixing a lot of these things because he's going to be a future first-round draft pick when he goes to Virginia Tech. Rough. Like, look at his Twitter. Nothing that says Penn State on it. He was fixing these things, and then after the Oregon game, he goes down for the year with a knee injury and is done. And so they put in former walk-on Dom DeLuca, who used to be a safety, he's 220 pounds, and isn't big enough to play that style of controlled defense. And that's what cratered them against those two teams in the middle of the season that led to James Franklin's firing. They lose him before playing Nico Iamaleava, and they didn't have a quarterback spy, and that guy runs like a deer. Like he's a gazelle in the open field. And so those things kind of imploded in the middle of the year, and now they've kind of reformed in a hybrid style of they're more attacking. They still emphasize coverage and control, but they'll allow on first and second down to be more aggressive and create negative plays. And I'm interested in if Jim Knowles sticks around with the new coach, if that leads to a new iteration from this defense, because that's what happened at Ohio State. He had constraints. He had problems with personnel where everything didn't fit right away. And then he came up with something that was genuinely different and worked really well. Is that same process going to get to play out at Penn State? I'd like to see that. I don't know that it will.
Gotcha. Let's talk defensive line. It feels like every single year, it's just Penn State has a dominant edge rusher, and especially these last 2 weeks, it seems like Denai Dennis Sutton was pretty much playing quarterback. He was back there so much. It was ridiculous. But between him, Zane Durant, just talk to me about what this unit's been over the past couple weeks specifically, and is Chaz Coleman going to be good for this game? I know he's like a freshman phenom basically this year.
Yes. So we're recording this before I'm going to go to practice. That's our first opportunity to see if he's available. And we don't know. He hasn't been available the last couple of weeks. He's been banged up. As much as people want to say, oh, he's been banged up, wink. Like our reporting is that he's banged up. He's not able to play. And that's been kind of the thing. He was sick in the middle of the season. He's kind of had some highs and lows from a health perspective. I would say genuinely at this point, I don't know, but whatever it is that's been holding him out, I have a hard time thinking he'll be out there. And then from the defensive perspective as a whole, it's hard because they're really good football players, but they're just not Abdul Carter or Chop Robinson. They're not the guys that they were trying to replace. And so Zane Durant is truly a phenomenally unique athlete. He runs like 4.66 as a defensive tackle. He struggled in this defensive style as a plugger, as a guy that's going to get double teams and stop them. But they've allowed him to be more of what he was before, which is upfield gap penetrating guy. And he started to do what he did previously, which is absolutely wreck run concepts. And they are allowing those other guys to be more of the one technique and stop the run. So Xavier Gilliam, Alonzo Ford, some of those other guys, and they've got a better balance up front. And that's been the thing. But again, like what happened against Michigan State is Denai is going to play in the NFL. He's not going to be a first-round draft pick, but he's going to play in the NFL. He's got a high motor. The dude does not quit. He's a psycho. Like, if I were born as a Penn State football player or as a football player in general, I would want to be Denai Dennis Sutton. He's just, like, insane in the best way. Just all aggression all the time. But he doesn't have the best moves in the world. And he doesn't have the bend to get to the quarterback all the time. But if he's got a bad matchup, he is going to hammer that every single play. And that's what he's been able to do the last couple of games is he's just been better. Like, he's a good run defender. He's got a big body. He's strong. He's physical. And he can, through speed and effort to the edge, he can get around the tackle. And so if he has that matchup, he's going to win. If the other guy is better than him, he's going to run really hard up the field and get washed out. So that's really the matchup is if he can win it, he's going to win it 100% of the time. And so that's been kind of the story of him in the second half of the season. Kind of like the offense, dominating inferior opponents. But when you go up against somebody like for like, they don't have a closer on this team. They don't have a Tony Rojas could have been that guy, but they don't have a guy who's an elite athlete that's also got that killer instinct in him. But they have a lot of really, really good B+, A- pieces that if you just had that one guy, this defense, I don't think we have any of the conversations that we've been talking about. But they've found a new way forward with this particular unit.
Yeah, I got to be honest. Tonight, Dennis Sutton scares the shit out of me. Rutgers is down the left tackle. They're down the left tackle number 3 on the season. So
there you go. So he should. He absolutely
concerning.
Should. Also, I would never say any of that to his face. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm terrified of the guy. I have a lot of respect for him as well, but you got to be honest.
And not only, on the defensive side of things, he's blocked, 3 kicks this year already?
That's been awesome. That's been really fun to watch. That's just been really entertaining because he has a knack for it because it's running straight up field. It's running as fast and as hard as you can to the point, and he's hard to block once he gets going. So they've moved him around, and, the predictability of where he's going to line up has been the problem. So as long as you double team him, you should be fine, but then you're opening up stuff for other people. So that he's almost won or gotten them back in games. Like UCLA, block punt also almost got him back in the game. I forget the other game where he did it, and that was a momentum swing. They just couldn't capitalize on offense. So he has been a very, very. I don't want this to come off the wrong way because anytime you try to have context and nuance, all people hear is I'm saying he's trash, and he's an NFL player. He's really good, but they needed a superstar to save this defense, and he just isn't going to be the 3rd overall draft pick in the NFL draft. I don't feel like that's an insult.
Yeah, it's certainly not. And as Rutgers fans, we kind of feel like we've been living in the upside down to, make a Stranger Things reference on the heels of
I feel that way.
New season.
Are you talking about your offense?
The offense.
Yeah.
Rutgers is 8th in Cadillac Manis is 3rd in the Big Ten in passing yards. Antoine Raymond, which is kind of what Rutgers has run through, is a stud running back, is third in the Big Ten in rushing yards. KJ Duff's second in the Big Ten in receiving yards. Ian Strong is up on the leaderboard as well. How do you think this defense matches up with Rutgers offense, and what would your game plan be to stop this Rutgers offense if you were designing a game plan around it?
So I've been calling them spicy Rutgers this year because Ethan Kaliakmanis is like he can sling it. Like I remember watching a play in a Rutgers game after Penn State had played, and I rarely get a chance to watch games live and just watch them. And I had to rewind it 3 times because he threw a goal line fade and it landed in the second row of the end zone, and I was just like, he's like with NIL, he's probably getting paid to do this now. And that was the result. And I was like, that's just like, I can't take that seriously. But this year, my goodness, he reminds me of like a robotic Carson Wentz who's actually good at football. And there's he's got a big body. He can run a little bit, but everything looks herky jerky. But his passes are more accurate now. He gets the ball out on time. He's decisive. He's got a strong arm. All those tools that you saw at Minnesota when he was a freshman quarterback, he's delivered on a couple of them, on a good bit of them. But to me, the overall thing is it's Rutgers plus a good game plan, but it's Rutgers. So the talent, the high watermark of the talent is not to the level to challenge some of the best teams in the Big Ten. So I guess for me, it's just stop the run and clamp and play man coverage. And I think Penn State can do that. It's just suffocate. If you can get them in a negative situation and keep the quarterback in the pocket, I don't know that the skill positions overall, as much as I think the running game is good and bottle up the running game, I don't know that these skill players are going to challenge Penn State's DBs. We haven't talked about them a lot this year. They've been a little up and down. They did not prove that they're on the level of some of those better teams that they played in the middle of the season, but they still are talented. I still think those guys are NFL talents. And I guess the talent disparity, I'm just going to lean on that in this game. And so I'm going to be as aggressive as I want to be and, force Rutgers to prove their one-on-one athletes are going to be better than Penn State's, while still throwing in enough zones to try and confuse the quarterback and not be predictable. Because I do think Kaliakmanis can be the equalizer for Rutgers to keep them in the game, as long as Rutgers defense doesn't trip over their shoelaces getting onto the field, and they don't have a 14-point hole to start the game.
Well, here's the interesting thing about spicy Rutgers. Kirk Ciarrocca said it takes 3 years to master his offense. This is year 3 with Kaliakmanis. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. Maybe Penn State gave up on Kirk Ciarrocca a little bit too soon.
I agree 100%. Yeah, and not only did it not remember, he came to Penn State during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So he didn't get to have a spring football. They were doing virtual installs. They didn't run his offense.
Oh, jeez.
They ran some monstrosity of Will Levis as a fullback to get them first downs because they didn't have a training camp. They didn't have a spring football. They didn't install his offense here. And then they went and got Mike Yurcich because they thought he was a better version, a more explosive passing version of Kirk Ciarrocca. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. I'm really impressed. Spicy Rutgers is not me making fun of it. I respect what they've been doing. I like this offense. It's been entertaining. I watched the game against Iowa earlier in the year, and I was like, holy hell, I was not expecting this from this combination, but it's been good. And I think that would be this is the side of the ball that keeps them in the game, which I would have never thought coming into this game at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and where Ethan's primarily struggled is 2 main areas. One is he's a rhythm passer, so if he's kept clean and he's not seeing ghosts and he's able to feel the pressure well, he's able to kind of hit those 7-yard out routes with regularity, hit those slants to KJ Duff, then Ian Strong. But when he's kind of knocked off his game a bit, then you see 2021 Ethan come out where he's just running around, throwing balls, nowhere even close to his guys. And the other is when his receivers are really kind of press manned up, they really struggle to kind of fight through that.
Yeah.
So those timing routes and those rhythm routes aren't really there because he's actually got jammed and now he's used to the 1-2 throw and now it's 1-2-3. He's not there. Oh shit, where's my second read? Oh, he's already covered. Takes a sack. So that's the thing that worries me about Penn State, like you said, because you guys do have DBs that have NFL talent and you have a strong defensive line that. If he's not kept clean, I struggle. I mean, we've seen it happen a few times this season where he's, most of the games where he is in rhythm, he's throwing for 70%, and then those games where he's not, it's 40%. So
yeah, so Penn State installed part of the change of the defense is for third downs and passing situations, they've reinstalled their prowler package, which was a Manny Diaz thing. And Terry Smith is the former cornerbacks coach, now interim head coach. So he's got an intimate knowledge of like the defensive structure and what he wants from most of the staff from the Manny Diaz time is still here. So they have that institutional knowledge. And that's what it's all about. It's about pressure from odd places. It's about blitzes, aggression, trying to get to the quarterback and make him uncomfortable. So they dropped that against Indiana, and it confused Fernando Mendoza till the end of the game when they started playing coverage and being safe. And so that is something that can absolutely happen in this game. And what happened, I think, early in the game, you mentioned it, early in the year, like they were getting some press coverage, but they were breaking through it. And like his vertical passes, his accuracy when he does have a rhythm throw, I think is really impressive. So if I'm saying like, what don't I want to have happen? I don't want him to get into rhythm and hit some of those vertical shots. The slot fade was really good for you guys early in the year. And so that could happen against this team, but I highly doubt it because I feel like the corners are now playing with way more confidence. And they got five guys now because the freshman Darius Dixon. I think you can go 5 deep in the DB room and not find a weakness in that cornerback room.
Let's talk about the special teams. You already kind of alluded to some of the prowess the Penn State punt block units had. Talk about punting, kicking, kickoff return, punt return. Are you guys having a good season there? Just kind of walk us through special teams a little bit.
So just a little bit behind the scenes, I do film analysis at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com if you couldn't tell. Like I do the X's and O's, I break down the offense, I break down the defense. I'm going to the bathroom during special teams. I don't do special teams. I don't know anything about it. But, to give you the high overview, the block punts have been a big thing. They've made plays on special teams. Their current special teams coach, I think, is really good. And so he's got them making plays this year. Gabe Nwosu, who you're going to see is the largest kicker. We've wanted to see what he looks like at D-tackle or offensive line.
Kicker.
He is 6'7", 299 or something like, or 278. Like he's huge. But he's also got a great leg and good touch. Like he is routine at pinning teams inside the 10. So punting is great. Kick return has been the part I think that's been the most up and down. So I don't see them getting a ton of plays out of that punt or kick return. But the kicking game, Barker and Nwosu, and then the defense, the punt block, the kick block, special teams, that's all been really good this year.
All right, T. Frank, we took enough of your time. Let's get to predictions. Podcast, as always, is sponsored by FanDuel. FanDuel has it at 13.5 in Penn State's favor and 55.5 over under. What are we thinking in this one?
Okay, I got to ask you a question first because my answer is kind of going to determine this because I've gone back and forth. I gave my prediction earlier this week on the YouTube show, but with Greg Schiano calling plays, how many points is that worth to you guys?
Versus or as opposed to if Rob Smith was calling plays.
Yeah.
I would say like
5.
between 3.5 and 6.
Okay.
Roughly.
So I will go to my original because I actually bumped it up to 41. I'll go 38-17 Rutgers, and the 17, the extra 7 there, I think is respect for the offense. I don't know that they'll get there, but that's my indication of what I think that if they get close to 20 points in this game, I will be impressed by their ability to be more than I think the stereotypes of teams. And I always like that for teams. Like even in a loss, I want people to surprise me. And Rutgers has been, of the teams I've had to scout this year, Rutgers has been one of the more entertaining ones. So I appreciate that. And, 38-17 is my prediction.
This is like the cross section for, I think, a lot of Rutgers fans between head and heart, because I think if Rutgers would have played Penn State October 11th instead of Northwestern, I feel like it would have been a Rutgers victory. If Penn State didn't look so good because it's not like you guys put up one of the best fights against Ohio State all year against any team. That score, I think, was not indicative of how close it was for the large majority of it. You guys had Indiana against the ropes. You arguably win that game at least 50% of the time. And then Michigan State and Nebraska looked dominant at times, and Nebraska looked dominant the whole game. So my head doesn't really see a path for Rutgers to realistically win this game unless they're able to shut down the run game and force Grunkenmeyer into a drop back passing game, which he's shown he's not super comfortable with. And I don't see a path to doing that. And it really pains me because Rutgers has been in this situation where you're kind of like winning in a few times in Greg Schiano's history, and it hasn't really ever he hasn't really ever won those games. We had a win and in situation against Maryland a couple years ago. I think it was 2021, and they got blown out. They've had a win in situation for the Big East title against UConn a couple times, and against Louisville a couple times. They've lost those games. So I'm unfortunately going to say Penn State is going to win this game. I've got Penn State 34, Rutgers 21 in a game that I think a lot of fans are really excited for, but realistically, I just am struggling to find a path that my Homer brain is comfortable taking to predict this victory. And it really pains me to predict that, because I feel like a lot of Rutgers fans, not that they chalked it up as a W, but I think this is the best chance that we're really going to have in the near term to beat Penn State. And it feels like that opportunity might slip away.
It's 2014, 2015, and then now, right? Since in the Big Ten Rutgers era for Penn State, when they tried to make this a rivalry, and like early on, watching some of those games, I think there was the overtime games against Rutgers that were fascinating, and Penn State fans were nervous about. And then it feels like, okay, they're wounded. This is the year, and then you catch them at the wrong time. Yeah, I totally see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
How about you, Rich?
This Penn State team scares the shit out of me for the sole fact that Rutgers has zero run defense whatsoever. Their linebacker core is awful. Their interior defensive line is awful. Hell, when it gets to the safeties, it's just basically game over at that point. I just can't see a way where Penn State doesn't win this one. And now I think I'm going to go like kind of in between your guys' scores, though. I'm going to say 31-21. I think Rutgers will be able to put up points early, but they're going to get stalled, whether it be at the second quarter, third quarter, kind of that middle eight where they always seem to struggle quite a bit. I can't see a way where Rutgers wins this game. I know it's for bowl eligibility. I know they'll pull out all the tricks and every stop they can just to try to score, but I can't see him getting past 21, honestly. And then Denai Dennis something blocking kicks. Jay Patel's got what 2-3 blocked kicks on the year. So it's like,
yeah, that's to me the only X factor that could potentially put Rutgers in the win column is if they have something that they've been saving. Like they had a bye 2 weeks ago before the Ohio State game, and we saw nothing of substance change from their play calling, from really anything. And they typically do make tweaks during the bye. So I'm wondering if they were kind of saving those tweaks for this game. And maybe this is just my, the copium hitting my veins at this point. But that's really the only way I could see Rutgers kind of being frisky enough to win is if they do, because Schiano 1.0 was known for his like trickeration. He had a lot of trick plays on special teams. They did a lot of interesting things on defense. We haven't really seen that this run. So
well, they almost did the one against Ohio State. The punter did roll out, and it looked like it was like, oh, is he going to go? No, and then it became like a 65-yard punt, which was kind of ridiculous in its own right. But.
Yeah, I do think this will be a kitchen sink game. Not that that'll push them over the edge, but I do think anything they got left in the clip, they're going to fire off in this game.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 100%.
T. Frank, you've been great with your time. Tell our listeners where they can find your work, where they can find you on social media. All those things.
Yeah, so if you're watching the video version at tfrank3, but primarily like bluewhiteillustrated.com is where we have our written content and all that stuff that you're looking for. If you want opponent previews, you want to get our perspective on Rutgers. And then the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, that's my home. I'm the host of our BWI live show. I do a post-game show instantaneously after the game. I do a tailgate show. I do a Monday video. I do a Friday video. I do all the videos, the Terry Smith press conferences, like all of it. So if you like Penn State football, you're more curious, you want to learn more about your opponent, we've got a ton of stuff up there already. Although we are off for Thanksgiving, so I'm not going to be on air on Thanksgiving. I'm going to be cooking from 5 a.m. until about 2. No, I like it. I like to cook, so it's fun. Right. It's fun for me. It's a challenge in its own right. It's just challenging a different part of your brain. Plus, food is delicious.
I got one for you now. Since Greg Schiano didn't answer it in my press conference, and I know James Franklin does this last year, I'm going to ask you what your favorite side dish is.
Okay, here's the deal. You don't know what you just stepped into.
Oh.
So for 12 years, he's been doing that. He has been for 12 years asking people what all the Thanksgiving things. And so I sit in the back with my camera and I record the press conference, put up on the YouTube channel. And I'm not like I have a hybrid role. I'm not like just the writers, so I don't need the quotes to do my job. So like I'm a second-class citizen at these press conferences, but I love to cook and I love making Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday of the year. Not once in 12 years did I get asked my favorite side or how we cook the turkey or ham. I was so mad because like I had way better answers. I would have been way better at bantering about these things because that's my job is to banter. And not once in 12 years did I get to answer the question. And the answer to the question is corn pudding or corn casserole, whichever one you want to call it. That is the best side dish for Thanksgiving. But the answer is all of it. You do not skip any of the things on Thanksgiving. Everything goes on your plate, and then you make decisions on the second plate whether or not you're going to get more. Now, it's not a side because people don't consider a side, but the most important thing at Thanksgiving are the homemade rolls. Do not buy them from the store.
Ooh.
Homemade rolls. And that's the real answer. The core, the heart of Thanksgiving is the side roll with butter fresh out the oven. That's be the last thing that comes out of the oven.
Oh, yeah.
Go onto the plate hot, put the butter on, shove 6 of them in your mouth, and fall asleep as the Cowboys suck at football after your meal. So there you go.
At least we could all agree on that. F the Cowboys.
I just got hyped. Like, hyped for Thanksgiving now. I got like goosebumps.
That's what I do. I'm the hype guy. That's what I do. That's what's up.
It is interesting how many foods are like really only consumed on Thanksgiving, though. Like, not that turkey is that, but like you're not ever picking up cranberry sauce outside of this end of Thanksgiving.
How many times do you make a casserole, right? Like we're not a casserole society anymore. Like we're obviously like a takeout society. Have it delivered to your home. It's Chinese food. It's whatever. We're not making anything with Campbell's soup all that much anymore, where you just pouring a bunch of things into a crock pot or into a baking sheet and then putting it in the oven for 45 minutes. So I like the return to the things I remember when I was a kid, right? Some of those, I don't know how you guys are, but like the 90s cooking comes out in me. When we have Thanksgiving, and it's all about the soups being poured into a casserole dish with some sort of vegetable to be like, hey, it's healthy, and it's not. It's just fat and sugar, and it's delicious.
Yeah, it's like the cooking, but really like half of it's done for you with the pre-processed stuff. Yeah, it's like that weird mix between making it yourself and having a company make it for you.
Yeah.
D. Frank, you've been more than generous with your time. We are going to cut it off here. Rutgers fans, Penn State fans, I hope you have a better idea of where you should be putting your hard-earned money if you are a gambler on this game. But that is it for us. Hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving and is traveling safe if you're going to the game or coming home from your festivities. But for me, Richie, and T. Frank, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off.